All right, so where does a child's confidence come from? It comes from the environment and the people around them, okay? It likely comes from you watching this video. It comes from a confidence coach like myself. It comes from their environment. It comes from themselves. But how is it created in them? It is practiced and it is taught. Children have to be taught confidence so that they understand how to keep on that level of just delusional enough to have an imagination, if that's what you want to call imagination, but grounded enough to make the logical next step that makes sense in your current reality. So being the difference between being able to make a goal, a large goal, and being able to create incremental steps to achieve that. That is helping them develop confidence as well. That is how children become confident, is giving them the balance and the structure to be able to put those type of things in place, giving them the balance and the structure to be able to weigh out decisions and, stick by what they say and stand on their principles and what they believe in, and also being open-minded enough to recognize that perhaps you're not correct, perhaps what you're saying is wrong. So, it's like it's a very delicate balance, and it comes from practice, and it comes from parents. Parents have a huge part in that development. It comes from guardians. It comes from relatives. It comes from friends, society. Confidence is something that apparently also like the epigenetics of it all. But the point is, confidence can also come from the child. Like they could just be someone who's just comes out naturally very, very confident and very, very assured and sure of themselves. So it's just important to recognize that you have a part to play in the child's development of their confidence, and recognize what a task you have set for yourself, because it requires you, as the person that notices that this is something that has to be gained, it's a skill. It requires you being very, very mindful of how you interact with children. That's the main thing, being very, very mindful about how you speak to them, and recognizing that children are not, in fact, miniature adults. Children are children. They are not, in fact, miniature adults. They are children developing. Their brains are still developing. All of that jazz. Like, they're not adults. They're children. So it's really creating that environment for them where they can thrive as children, where they can really show who they are as children and be guided and nurtured. When you have a nurturing spirit and a nurturing heart and a nurturing mind, children recognize that. And you also have to redirect them, because sometimes children will push the boundaries. Sometimes people do that in general, so you have to expect children to. A lot of times people get mad at children for doing things that grown adults do, and it's like, well, why would you get mad at a child but not an adult? Like, make it make sense. You do it, so why wouldn't your child do it? That's the example you set, so why would your child do anything different from what you do? It's like, come on. But when you're developing the confidence in the child, you have to be aware of those things, and a lot of times people forget. It takes a village to raise a child, and that's why I am a children's life coach, or children's confidence coach specifically, because I feel like confidence is the key to life. Confidence is a balance. Confidence is the courage to try, the decision to do it, and the maintenance to keep going. And recognizing, little by little, a little becomes a lot. Staying in your lane, minding your business, allowing other people to be themselves, recognizing that not everybody is gonna do wonderful things, and that's just what it is. Not begging people to be a part of your life when they don't want to be. All of those things develop from confidence. And that's what I was saying. So helping kids, like, because sometimes kids be doing too much. So even when I'm like, helping them develop confidence, I'm really particular about the way that I discipline as well, because of my role. I'm not their parent. I'm their confidence coach. So I'm very particular in the way that I discipline, and I use discipline very, very sparingly, because I want them to recognize, like, when if I do, and thankfully I haven't had to like really discipline a child, because we haven't gotten to that space, because of the way that I purposely interact with them. So I will allow, like, if there's a day or two where a child's just off, like, fine, whatever. Everybody should feel comfortable enough to have a day where they're just a jerk and whatever. That's fine. People are people. And though, sometimes they be pushing the boundaries too much, and I have to redirect them. So the children do need structure and things as well, but they also need to be able to be children too. So it's a very, very delicate balance, and it's all about just recognizing your role in that system. So yeah, it's very delicate, and it does require you as well to be hyper aware of your own reality. And that is also why people are like, why don't you have children? Oh, well, because one, that's a huge sign up, that's a big ask. That's a lifestyle change. So right now I'm very comfortable serving and helping the children in the capacity of a children's life coach. And also, there are things that I feel like you have to have worked through before you should even have children. And if you already have children before you've healed your inner child, then it's like a double dose poison, because you're likely going to traumatize your children based on the trauma that you've experienced if you're unhealed and not even trying to heal. So all that to say, there are things that I feel like people should heal before they, have children. And so, I'm still healing myself too. You feel me? I'm still working through my own things that need to be healed, period. And that's a part of life, is having the confidence to recognize that you have developing to do, and recognizing where you are and being okay with that. So that is what I instill in children, period, through fun and play. Because one child I have, he's so awesome. He was like, he said something, we were talking during our lessons or whatever, and then he was like, so you taught me and I didn't even realize it, huh? And I was like, yep. But he is a very, very smart young man, very, very mature, just wonderful dude all around. So I wasn't even surprised that he put those things together, just because of the level of his mind is just next level. And you just have to be able to acknowledge that. That's another thing. Like, you have to be able to acknowledge that some children are just more gifted in areas than others. And it's okay for them to know that they're gifted in that space. Doesn't mean that another child's less than, but like, feed your child when you realize the things that they're good at, and actively praise them for those things. Actively do so, because where you show them attention is where they will seek affection and validation later on in life. Okay, so pause on that note. Let me show you a snippet of one of my self-paced coaching things that is available in my membership for the children, and we'll be back. Is a story. You see, we're starting out with the story just to get us in the right mindset to even understand what this week looks like. So this is called The Sea Turtle Who Gave Up. All right. Deep in the ocean, where the water shimmered like glass, there lived a young sea turtle named Luco. Luco wasn't the fastest swimmer or the strongest, but he had something special: big dreams. Luco spent his days imagining ways to help sea creatures travel faster. What if I had a coral bridge between what if we had a coral bridge between reefs, he wondered, or shells that let us glide through the currents? One day, Luca shared his best idea yet with his friends, a special kind of seaweed wrap that could help turtles swim faster with less effort. His eyes sparkled just as he explained how it would work. But his friends, Taco the octopus, Myra the dolphin, and Jet the stingray, just laughed. A seaweed wrap? That's the silliest things I've ever heard, scoffed Myra. Yeah, Luca, you always coming up with weird ideas, Jet sneered. Taco swirled around Luco and whispered, maybe you should stop trying so hard. You're just a slow turtle after all. Luco's heart sank. Maybe they were right. Maybe his ideas didn't matter. So he stopped. He stopped dreaming, stopped investing, stopped believing in himself. And while Luco sat alone in the sand, his friends did something unexpected. They took his idea. They worked together, perfecting the seaweed wrap, and soon turtles all over the ocean were using it. Jet, Myra, and Taco became famous. Everybody admired their brilliant invention. Luco watched from a distance as they celebrated. No one remembered that it was his idea first. No one even looked his way. For a moment, he thought about speaking up. He thought about telling the truth. But then he heard Myra say, good thing Luca gave up. He would have never made this work. And so Luca turned away. He swam deeper into the ocean where the water was darker, colder. He didn't try to dream anymore. He didn't try at all. Because in the end, what was the point? As they say, he better than me. All right. So you're going to answer these questions in your own way, from your own POV. What would you do differently from Luca? Why would you say that those were his real friends? So like, do you think that those were really his friends if they told him that his dream wasn't smart and that he couldn't do it? And do you think his I'm going to change that. It's supposed to say, do you think his friends really thought his ideas were weird? So I got to fix that. So do you think his friends really thought his ideas were weird? And then what advice, oh Lord, look at there's a K in there. What advice would you give Luco? So answer those questions in your own words from your own POV. And this time I will actually give you my feedback and what I think as well in the next clip. I just want you to get used to, coming up with your own thoughts and ideas first. And now I'll share what I think about this story, specifically this one. And we're back. I just like it to look like I froze that whole time until the thing was over. I just think it's funny. Anyway, what you really, I'm trying to make sure I'm saying it right. The things that you speak on, look at these birds. The things that you recognize and mention the most to your children is and are the things that they are going to seek out later on in life, okay? Unless they become aware of enough to adjust it. But that will be their default setting that they will have to reprogram later on in life if they don't learn it. So what I mean is, if you only show attention to your child when they do something wrong, so you don't acknowledge them for their good grades, or you don't acknowledge them for cleaning their room, or you don't acknowledge them for winning their sport, or you don't acknowledge them for just being a great human being, right? You don't acknowledge them for any of those things because you feel like they're supposed to just do those things. So why would I acknowledge it? Whatever. That doesn't even make any sense, because you are probably someone who you need validation from your boss. You are wondering why you don't get a promotion. Oh, but it's what you're supposed to do. You want a raise, right? But like that, why would you get a raise for something you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to do your job. So why would you get anything more? Why should you get employee benefits? That's what you're supposed to do. Oh, well, you pay the bills. Okay. Yes, you do pay the bills, which is good. But I'm just saying, like, you have to get out of that mindset. Like, you want promotions, you want employee benefits. You're happy when your boss gives you a kudos, but you were just supposed to do that. You're supposed to do a good job at your job, right? So, like, make it make sense. If you want that, of course your child wants it. Children are not miniature adults, they're children. So anyway, you have to recognize that if you only acknowledge your child when they do bad stuff, that's what they're going to seek your attention that way. So they're going to do more bad stuff. If you yell at them, at least you see me, because ultimately people just want to be seen, heard, and valued. So even if their whole life all you've done is yell at them, they're going to seek out your affection through yelling, because at least you acknowledge me. At least you care about something. You might not care about me, but you care that I mess with your car. So at least you are recognizing that I exist. At least you're validating my existence. And then their whole life, they're going to seek out validation through that. And then you're going to complain, oh, I can't believe such and such turned into this. Well, what did you plant? You're judged by the fruit that you produce at the end of the day. So, what did you plant in them to create this situation? So, it's like a lot of things, like we were taught, especially in like the Black community, where the people were freaking enslaved, for Pete's sake. So a lot of the things that were passed down came from an enslaved populace. So of course there are going to be some fallacies in the parenting methodology to some level of how to raise healthy children, because we were taught how to raise slaves. So we have to keep that in mind. So when you're saying things to your child out of anger, or just recognizing them for something bad, like, are you raising a slave? You know what I'm saying? Or are you raising a critical free thinker? And when you start to realize, where things come from, then you can address it a little bit easier. You can work on it a little bit more. And you won't be so hard on yourself. And people can say, oh, whatever. You can't have a logical mind and say that the descendants of people who were enslaved don't have traumas from that when it was only a few generations away. You can't logically say that, because the grandparents, the great-grandparents raised the great-great-grandparents raised the great-grandparents. The great-grandparents raised the grandparents. The grandparents raised the parents, and the parents raised the children. Okay? So we're not going to act like, unless someone purposefully made a change, that you don't even realize the fallacy of what you're practicing. There was in one of Florence Scovel Shinn's books, there was a lady who, her mom always cut the ends off the pot roast. So that's what she did, right? It might have been some other meat, but for all purposes of this, we're going to use pot roast. And so the lady cut the ends off of the pot roast. And I think it was Florence Scovel Shinn, but it might have been someone else, whatever. The point is, they cut the ends off the pot roast. And the girl, she's like, my mom always cuts the ends off the pot roast, so she always cuts the ends off the pot roast. And finally someone said, like, why do you do that? She's like, because my mama did it, and that's how you're supposed to do it. And her friend's like, no, you don't have to do that. So she's like, yes, you do. And so finally she went and asked her mom, well, why do you do that? Her mom cut the ends off because her pot was too small to fit the entire pot roast in, not because she couldn't do it. It just, her pot wasn't big enough. So she had to. So she made do. But if you have a bigger pot, you can fit the whole pot roast in. You don't have to cut the ends off. So just because like something was done in the past, it doesn't mean that is the end all be all. It doesn't make it right. And so we have to recognize, especially if you came from an enslaved population, that there are probably some things that you practice and that you believe in that you're transferring to the next generation because back in the day something bad would have happened. And so it's just been programmed into you not to do this thing, but it doesn't make it right. And children being seen and not heard, children not being valued, children being expected to be miniature adults and all of these things is just ridiculous. We have to preserve their innocence and their imagination. That's the most important thing. That is the biggest thing, and that's the thing that everyone should be focused on, is preserving and protecting the innocence and the imagination of the next generation. Period. So I don't know about you, but that's what I'm doing. And if that's what you're into, and if you're trying to help your children, hit me up. Visit thelaptoplifecoach.com. Social clubs, because I just love the children. And if you don't have time for a social club, you can check out my membership. See you next time. Like this video if you're feeling froggy. Bye.